now that it's daytime and I can think straight, we're going to talk about the beta changes, specifically to tanks. So we are in the second week of beta, and we are in endgame testing. So this means Mythic Plus raid testing is actually happening, I believe, right now as I'm recording this video. Though today I want to talk about the tank changes. I will showcase them a little bit on beta for people who are too lazy to log in or don't have access, etc., and give my overall impressions. Now, last night I was able to stream a bit and play around with Brewmaster. I will eventually get to all the tanks, but as for some of the changes, because I haven't tested them yet, I might not have like the greatest idea how they're going to interact. But let's start off with Blood DK. I believe every tank had some changes besides the protections. Both Paladin and Warrior saw no additions this week, which is okay. This is kind of common where they tend to like leapfrog back and forth. So starting off with Blood DK. Melee auto attack damage has been increased by 150%. Blizzard made a post last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, talking about buffing auto attack damage for melee across the board. So seeing something like this isn't surprising. You're seeing the same thing for Frost. I don't know if they're doing it for any other tank, but this should help slightly in single target damage, obviously. So yeah, I don't have anything else to say there. Mastery. Blood Shield now appropriately displays the absorb amount up to 50% of your max health. I'm assuming that this was a unrelated or a bug that it wasn't properly showing, which is good. You obviously want accurate information when you're looking at this. Now the juicy stuff comes down here. So they have nerfed Blood Boil, and they nerfed Deadly Reach, which is the Death Strike Cleave, by 25% for the additional targets hit, and Blood Boil was nerfed by 12%. But Bloodshot no longer only increases physical damage. It'll now increase all damage dealt by 8%. So these other changes, I feel like they might have been slightly overtuned for where Blizzard wants to see them, but there's also just the fact that it's like a compensation buff where it's like, well, we're buffing this thing for Bloodshot, so we need to kind of pull back some other abilities, which kind of makes sense. And last but not least, they have a new talent called Bloody Reflection. While Blood Shield is active, taking direct damage reflects it back, dealing shadow damage to the attacker. So this presumably will be like direct auto attacks or any kind of specific like tank buster will do a little bit of damage. So it's like kind of similar to Shattering Bone, except it doesn't require the bone to shatter, but it also only reflects it, I'm assuming, back at the attacker. Now that might not be correct. It might reflect it in an AoE, but I think it's pretty much single target. Blood Shield's absorb is increased up to 65% of your max health instead of 50%, so small buff there. Overall leading to presumably more uptime on something like Bloodshots, and making you a little bit more tanky and having a higher threshold for things like auto attacks and whatnot. I think that Bloody Reflection will probably be, I don't want to say a must, but it's probably going to be pretty important to take. I just made this DK, by the way, so the build you're seeing is like super default. I think you would just drop consumption for it. I don't think there's a world where you would run Purgatory, or wouldn't run Purgatory, but you have this option to drop here. And then lastly, like I think Sanguinary Burst, because it's based on runic power spent for the burst, you could actually just like drop this for Umbilicus if you need some more additional healing. Some good stuff down here towards the bottom of the tree though. Now my plan is to test DK this week at some point. I'm not sure when. I don't know if it'll be today. I don't know if it'll be later. So I'm kind of looking forward to getting into it and kind of digging in. I think the changes are nice. I think this Bloody Reflection is kind of cool. I think it might be more of like a Mythic Plus talent than anything. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to sit down with someone like Kyrasis in the next coming weeks to talk about Blood and do like a little deep dive. I think that'd be pretty fun. Because I'm an idiot and I know nothing, and it'd be cool to talk to someone who really knows their shit. So yeah, I think all in all, pretty good changes. So moving on, we now have Demon Hunter. The changes that they made to Demon Hunter are all revolved around specifically their hero talent Annihilator. Unfortunately, these are like, I would say, pretty heavy nerfs to the hero talent specifically, though I can also admit that it was a little overpowered. So new talent. Harness the Cosmos. Voidfall Meteor damage increased by 15%. This is now a choice node against Doomsayer. Doomsayer, for those who aren't aware, is the when you Infernal Leap out of combat, it'll call down a Meteor Strike. Now, previously it was calling down 3, leading to Infernal Strike being, doing insanely high damage. It was also giving you cooldown reduction because it was calling down 3 meteors, which would then give you 10 seconds off of meta. And it was requiring you to drop combat to do so, which made the playstyle like a little interesting, but also probably problematic in some cases. So that's been changed. Final Hour has been updated, now causes Voidfall bonuses to linger for 8 seconds, was 12. I don't know if this is, I forgot where this is in the tree. So this is the uptime on your buffs. So basically, as you hit mobs with Voidfall, or every time you gain a stack of Voidfall, you gain 2% haste, take 2% less damage, and you have 2% or 3% increased movement speed from these 3 talents here. It's now going to last less time. So again, kind of a nerf to those stats. And then they fixed an issue causing Voidfall meteors to benefit from World Killer's radius increase. World Killer is the capstone talent that increases the area of effect of said meteors. And I think it was just the radius. I don't know if it was the damage per se, because I never noticed them all having increased damage. It was only the final hit, which is normal. So yeah, that was all changed. And then specifically for Vengeance, they nerfed Doomsayer to now only summon 1 Voidfall Meteor instead of 3. This also has a secondary kind of effect or nerf where, because we're only doing 1 Voidfall Meteor instead of 3, it is no longer giving us the cooldown reduction on Metamorphosis. I did say it was probably most likely a bug. I thought it was a really cool, interesting interaction, but clearly it was going to be overpowered as fuck. So, a little sad to see that go, but that's okay. Meteoric Fall has been updated, also now triggered by Soul Cleave. This is also kind of a nerf, because what was interesting and what was slightly like a skill curve was making sure you have Spirit Bomb every time you hit those 3 Voidfall stacks. It would call down 1 meteor if you Soul Cleaved, it would call down all 3 if you Spirit Bombed. So it was kind of this thing where you would try to bank a Spirit Bomb for that moment when you get 3 stacks, so you can do a burst of damage, consuming them all quickly, and then getting back into your cycle. If you Soul Cleaved, it would be slower getting out of the ramp, which meant that you are probably going to potentially miss out damage over the course of like an entire dungeon run, for example, or a boss fight in a raid, because if you're dumping them slower, you have to dump all your stacks to be able to reset to start gaining them again. So they kind of nerfed that as well, and they nerfed damage of Voidfall Meteor, which again, everything here makes sense, but I'm a little sad. I don't really know what I can really showcase out of this. I guess I could talk about damage or something, but basically, I feel like they kind of... Why are all these pirates hanging out here? Huh. Oh, well. So yeah, when we come over here and we Infernal Strike in, it's going to call down just 1 meteor. And if I pop meta, this should reduce it by 10 seconds. That makes sense. I Soul Cleave to do that, so Soul Cleave does work. It could be nice for some players. I personally think it removes a little bit of the skill ceiling, which is not fun. I like when there is a skill ceiling personally, but like waiting to get my 3 stacks. I think they did update this animation. Like, I think this is new, but when you get these these glows around your character, this means you have the Voidfall stacks ready to consume. But if we just Soul Cleave, it does consume all 3. So DH is still looking fun. It's just a little less powerful, and when I say a little bit, I mean a lot less. So yeah, anyways, that's DH. Next, we're going to talk about Guardian Druid. There's a lot going on here. They heard the community outcry from the lackluster hero talents, and they made a bunch of changes to, well, they added new talents, and I'm going to talk about these here. Again, this is going to be vibe-based, based on how I like the class Fantasy of Bear, because I haven't really tested this yet. So starting off, they are talking about their new talent, Killing Blow. I believe this was mentioned or implemented last week. It might have been NYI, which is not yet implemented, so it wasn't available to test. So it should work now in theory. Maul and Raise consume up to 40 additional rage to deal up to, 150% increased damage, making Maul and or Raise potentially just be like this insane dump. We're going to get to why this is also pretty cool later, because of Ursoc's Fury. They also added a new talent called Natural Resilience. When Frenzied Regeneration would heal you above max health, 80% of its excess healing is instead converted to an Absorb Shield. I personally think this one is super, super sick. Unfortunately, I don't think it's implemented yet. So if I shift out of bear form, I don't have anything bound here. And then into bear form, it should give me enough rage to hit Frenzied. If I hit Frenzied Regeneration, I don't see myself gaining an Absorb either on my buff bar or like on my character. Normally you see like that little glow. I don't see that at all. So I don't think it's implemented yet. It's right here. It's called Natural Resilience. In theory, this is such a cool thing. I think tanks having absorbs is the best thing a tank can have, because what you're essentially doing is effectively increasing your overall health pool beyond max health. So when you're at like mid health, let's say you're at 50% health, if you can somehow gain absorbs, and natural resistance wouldn't work here because it's only if you heal yourself above, but Ursoc's Fury, for example, gives you an absorb shield. It gives not only you time to heal yourself up, but it also allows your healer to react. And then when you are at max health, it'll mitigate a lot of the incoming damage. And I always like that about tank. It's a big reason why I like Brewmaster. Protection Warrior has a very similar thing with shield block and ignore pain. Blood DK with blood shields, the new DH stuff with resilience. You also have some absorbs, especially through Templar on the Paladin. I think absorb gameplay for tanks is really, really good. So in theory, once this is working, I think it's going to feel pretty good. And it also means it's less punishing to hit Frenzied Regen when you're near like max health. And it also makes it better in Incarnation and making you even more unkillable. I wonder what this will max out at though. I wonder if it's going to be like 30% of your max health, 50%, or if it's going to be an oversight and it's indefinite, so you can just like cap out a full health shield. That'd be kind of nuts. Next, they added a new talent called Dream Guide. This is going to compete with Dream of Cenarius as well, so you get one or the other. When you take non-periodic damage, you have a chance to gain a charge of Dream Guide. When you or a nearby ally drops below 40% health, you consume a charge to automatically regrowth them. Like I said, this is going to compete with Dream of Cenarius. I do like this a little bit more because now it's going to happen passively. This can be good or bad, right? If there's, encounters where no one's really dropping below 40% health, let's say like low keys, normal heroic dungeons, etc., this won't proc, and therefore you might want to play Dream of Cenarius, or you might have to play like Infected Wounds and Persistence to path through the tree. So you don't necessarily have to play this node, even though Dream of Cenarius is pretty nice, and it makes the regrowth deal more damage. Or not damage, healing, sorry. But Dream Guide could be pretty nice because it's hands-off, it's passive, and it's going to hopefully happen naturally. And the best part would be, in theory, if it works like this, again, I don't know because I haven't tested it, is if there's no internal cooldown. So let's say I'm assuming you can get a couple of charges. It stacks up to 4, right? Or am I thinking of something else? Oh, Dream of Cenarius stacks up to 4. I'd imagine this stacks, but maybe it doesn't. If it didn't have an internal cooldown, it would be kind of nice if it was just like, if 3 people all dropped to sub 40% health, if you casted Regrowth on all 3 of them. I think that'd be pretty insane. So yeah, cool idea. Not sure because I need to test it. So skipping past the Wild Guardian, I'll come back to talk about that. Dream of Cenarius has been updated. The 20-second lockout has been removed and converted it to a haste modifier, and now sexed it to 4 times. I don't know what this will actually do in terms of like, I don't think it's going to affect your rotation. I don't think you're going to be trying to regrowth more on people, though it does kind of go into the role of being like a protector of the wilds, like similar to Paladin, where you, not that you would, but in theory, like you could off heal a bit with like Word of Glory. You can off heal now similarly with Dream of Cenarius and regrowth procs while in bear form. I don't know if this change is good or not. Let me know if it is in the comments below, but once I eventually test bear, I might get a good read on it. And now we have Ursoc's Fury being buffed. So Ursoc's Fury is now 40% instead of 25, based on the damage dealt from Thrash and Maul/Raze, which also has cool synergy with Killing Blow. And again, like I said, absorb values are really cool for tanks in my opinion. It adds a lot of tankiness to the class inherently. Absorbs are really nice because they generally don't overheal because they're normally going to get fully absorbed by a tank player. And then finally, Ursoc's Fury, Raze, and Vulnerable Flesh have changed locations in the tree. Raze, I don't believe has... I mean, Raze was down here. I believe in the last build, though, it was already up here, replacing Maul. Killing Blow is now in the bottom of the tree, and Vulnerable Flesh is moved all the way up to the top. All in all, I think these are all pretty good changes. Last but not least, let's talk about Wild Guardian. So they have reworked this. I think the feedback that people have given was generally like, it's not rewarding, right? Waiting till after your cooldown ends to have the benefit was pretty lackluster, plus the actual effects were kind of mid. What they've done is they've kind of super buffed it. So rank 1, it now activates immediately after you cast Guardian of Ursoc or Berserk, so Incarnation. Spirits of the Wild come to your aid, causing your next 2 casts of Ironfur, Maul, and Frenzied Regen to be echoed at 150 effectiveness. So I believe this was all baked into like 1. So it's 50% effectiveness when you're only playing with the 1 point. So it's fine. So what'll happen is when I pop Incarn here, you're gonna notice that it's instantly Wild Guardian. So then you can pop it again immediately, gaining said buffs. Now, whether you'll want to actually use this right away, it kind of depends. You might use it later in, your rotation, later in the cooldown. You might save it. You might use it right away. Not quite sure. The next change that they made, beyond that, is that the rank 2 and 3, it's still going to give you the mastery gain, but Maul is now always empowered, meaning that every time you cast Maul, Razor, Ravage, it's going to deal 20 or 40% additional damage over 12 seconds. My only concern with this is that your stacks don't what am I trying to say here while I change talents? It doesn't pandemic. And so if you Maul back to back, you kind of like eat that damage and you just like overlap, which I don't think is good. It would be nice if it was similar to Ironfur, where like multiple applications can overlap, where the damage gets added to each other dynamically and will shift based on the previous kind of tick rates. I don't know if that made sense. I tried to sound smart, but probably sounded really dumb. But as you can see here, I'm going to hit raise, and it's going to apply that Vicious Brambles to said target. But if I raise again, it's going to overlap that damage, actually reducing it down lower, probably because I didn't crit. And so the problem is, because you can like actually eat it, and it doesn't have like a pandemic, you are going to be losing like a wee bit of damage if you raise too often. Now also, in theory, you could also just raise and Ravage whenever you lose Vicious Brambles. So you keep track of this buff, you apply it, the rest of your rage goes into Ironfur or Frenzied Regen, and then when it's about to fall off, you raise again. Plus, this would make a little bit of sense because it consumes excess rage to deal more damage. So right here, it's almost 3,000 damage every 2 seconds. So that could be the design philosophy that they're going for, where you kind of have to track this buff, and you only ever raise when you have like a ton of rage, or Maul, whatever you wanna say. So this is an interesting direction. That's my major concern with this new node, but I think always applying a dot through your Ravage, Maul / raise, whichever kind of hero talent or talents you're playing, I think is interesting, and can obviously lead to a pretty decent damage gain. But my major concern is obviously the overlapping dots. And then last but not least, we have the final capstone. So when you cast Wild Guardian, you also gain 2 charges of Dream Guide or Dream of Cenarius, I believe, based on whichever one you're talented into. You gain 2 charges of Dream of Cenarius or Dream Guide. Now, I wonder what happens. This is going to turn into like a testing session. What happens when you're not talented into either of them? Does it still give you them? If I pop Incarn, let's pop Incarn, pop Guardian, and then it just gave me Dream of Cenarius. And then when it gave me 2 stacks, but right when I used it, it instantly consumed both. Okay, that's good. I'll report that. So yeah, you gain 2, and then Wild Guardian's echoes are cast at 100% effectiveness, and each echo 2 additional times over 8 seconds. So major buff to the capstone. Basically, it's jumping right from 50 all the way up to 150, and it should echo. The echoes should echo. I think, if I'm reading that correctly, Wild Guardian's echoes are now cast at 100 effectiveness, and each echo in each echo, referring to the echoes. So the echoes echo. That's tripping me up. All right. So yeah, those were all changed, and then they removed Circle of Life and Death. Overall, pretty good changes. I'm gonna be testing these 3 tanks at some point this week, along with Prot Warrior and Prot Paladin. I expect to be testing a lot of beta between my Minecraft sessions. And then last but not least, let's quickly just talk about Monk. there's not much to talk about here because they just made one little change to the Shadowpan tree. So when it comes to Shadowpan, what they've done is they've updated Weapons of the Wall. This obviously through most of alpha and the first week of beta was still based on like energy being spent. This has been changed to literally just increase the Black Ox stomp damage by 20%. This adds more power into our cooldown. It also now fully requires you to run it because obviously you need it for the capstone, you need it for Weapons of the Wall, you need it because of efficient training. Basically, you have to play this cooldown, which is fine. My major concern is how low your Black Ox is in the tree. I don't like it being down here, even though it is worthy of a capstone spot. Being so reliant on Shadowpan, or Shadowpan being so reliant on this cooldown, kind of locks you into at least this side of the tree a little bit. Again, this is such a minor complaint, but it would be nice if our Celestial was more centralized, even if it was more of a center node. But it being this deep means that it's like Shadowpan pretty much always plays down the right side. So that was a change. So far, I did do a bit of testing yesterday on stream. Brewmaster generally feels pretty good. Shadowpan feels way better than Master of Harmony currently. I think there's still a lot of bugs in the class, which I will be going over this week in a video. I just saw Drogo. And yeah, that's really it. I don't believe any of the other tanks have gotten any changes. If we scroll down, Paladin, unless there was some like back-end stuff that I'm not aware of, they didn't note anything in the Paladin tree, or at least for protection. And same thing with Warrior. I believe Warrior only was touched on its DPS side for Arms and Fury, and then the Slayer hero talent. Now, chances are, if you are a Warrior Paladin player, I wouldn't fret. They're probably just gonna they've been doing this like leapfrog thing, it feels like, the last couple weeks. I'm sure Warrior and Paladin will get some love if they have anything wrong with them over the next couple weeks. So yeah, those are all the changes. Beta testing is open, so if you did pre-purchase the Epic Edition of Midnight, I believe it's the Epic Edition, you have beta access. So you can test yourself or just keep watching videos like this. All right, anyways, thanks for watching. Peace.